So I've decided not to follow an upload schedule because that lasted all of one day and went terribly wrong. So today I'm delving into the world of movie reviews. I'm starting with an instant classic that was recently brought to my attention, Highlander. If you're around during the time of the movie's release, you probably know what it is, but if not, you're in for a treat. I'd say the movie is probably best described as mixing classic 80's tropes with testosterone and confusion. Probably also just a lot of drugs. It starts with some really vague narration about like a race that's living among humans, which is probably important, but it's overshadowed by the fact that Queen does music for the movie, which is cool. After the credits roll, the first scene is a wrestling match with the Confederate flag and a bunch of flashbacks to 1536 Scotland. This movie stars Christopher Lambert, a French actor with a perfect Scottish accent.
Tell me, how did it happen, for God's sake?
His character, Connor MacLeod, is introduced through one of the greatest, most 80s sword fights of all time. It starts like this.
MacLeod. Fazil. Wait. All right.
I encourage you to watch the whole scene. It's beautiful. So then we have an artsy transition back to 16th century Scotland, where there's about 6 minutes devoted to Connor MacLeod and the MacLeod clan being just killed. My guy Connor gets fucking stabbed, right? And then there's an even artsier transition back to the 80s in New York City, where Connor gets a nice taste of some great, good old-fashioned American police brutality.
You ass?
Why, Garfield? You cruising for a piece of ass?
I'll tell you what happened, Russell.
And they just kind of like let him go, I guess.
Am I under arrest?
Not yet.
Then we're through.
Thanks. We're just getting started.
It's brought up here that Connor is an antiques dealer, which that comes into play a little later. We then see the dude who stabbed Connor is cruising around in the 80s. You know, here's a quick summary of the guy. He's goth, he's loaded, got a fucking sword.
The Gathering.
He also seems to know who this girl Candy is.
I'm Candy.
Of course you are.
Dub voice too, like, fuck. So back when Connor killed that guy in the parking garage, right? He leaves his sword up in like this thing that hangs down from the ceiling for some reason. So he goes back to the scene of the crime to retrieve his sword, and then a woman from forensics comes in, and they kind of scare each other off. Only to find each other in a bar a couple minutes later.
Hey, Brenda, usual?
Lots of it.
Her name is Brenda, by the way. Brenda asks if Connor has been following her,
Have you been following me?
and then she follows him, and they fight Goth Boy.
Be quiet.
There's even more incompetent police work.
Another time, Highlander.
And then back in Scotland, Connor gets fucking banished from the MacLeod clan because he survived the stab wound, and he's got the devil in him.
I'm not going anywhere.
But joke's on those guys, because the Highlander, my guy's got a massive apartment, a gross-ass fish tank, marble doors, and a fucking circle couch where he reminisces about blacksmithing, dubbing over lines in post,
I blossom.
and field sex that is interrupted by Sean Connery. Here's the thing about Sean Connery's character, right? A well-cultured man. He's an Egyptian living in Spain who has a Scottish accent and fights with a katana. Fucking Mr. Worldwide. Another thing is that he's very sure of Connor's identity.
You're Connor McLeod.
Maybe I am.
You're Connor McLeod.
They get on a boat, and Connor insults Sean Connery's character, calling him a
Stupid haggis.
because, Scotland. He promptly falls in a lake where, instead of drowning, he laughs because it turns out he's immortal. Obviously, a training sequence is the next thing to come, and during this, Sean Connery explains their species to Connor. Essentially, they're immortal. They can only be killed by decapitation. That explains the first fight scene. And there's a prophecy or something where the last one of them standing gets a prize, which explains Goth Boy going,
There can be only one.
just all the time. Sean Connery also happily runs in some sand. It's a great time. Remember that training sequence I mentioned just a couple seconds ago? That's interesting for a multitude of reasons. But the one that stands out to me most is that there are 2 end of montage scenes. They're just the most cliche end of montage scenes ever. In the first one, Connor and Connery, very convincingly, fight on top of a rock. And Connor bests his teacher, and triumphantly just kind of yells, pans up into the sun. This cuts to,
Now, pendejo. Shall we see what sort of swordsman you've become? On guard.
they sort of fight, and then Connor bests him again, but seemingly for the first time. The way it was portrayed, right? Now, there's a lot to unpack here, actually. Obviously, there's no need to include both shots, but there's more to it than that. Connery calls Connor pendejo, right? Because Spanish, obviously. Gotta throw in just classic insults. But here's the thing. In 16th century Spain, where this guy is from, the word pendejo was used to mock teenagers without pubic hair. So Christopher Lambert was 29 when this movie came out. See, I didn't expect the writers to have done a ton of research for this movie, and it doesn't really matter, but I just find it funny. I mainly love how it goes from you've bested me, to I'm gonna see if you're a good swordsman after I've just sparred with you for a considerably long amount of time and you've already beat me. Let's do this for the first time, So I'm not sure how this part happened, but we've got a guy with a katana teaching a guy with a long sword how to fight. I don't know much about swords, but I know for sure that the director knows a lot less than I do. And like any great action movie, has a limited grasp on the concepts of physics. So if at any point you're going to watch this movie, which I fully recommend, I'd say now's the time to do it. The rest of the video, it'd be best to see this stuff first, don't want to spoil it. But feel free to come back and see my commentary on the end, because I've got a lot to say. So a bit later, we're still in old Scotland here, Goth Boy comes over for supper, but he's not impressed by Sean Connery's hospitality. So he cuts a table, and then they climb a falling down castle where he kills Sean Connery at the top. But in the process, his neck gets cut, and he does one of those fucking e-boy growls that just, fucking makes me wish for death. So over in 1984, Brenda comes over to talk about swords, because other than working for the police, she's somehow also an expert on antique swords. Things get kind of flirty, because obviously...
Do you cook?
Why?
I thought we might have dinner.
The screen shatters, and then Connor leaps with the grace of a gazelle, and now he's in the midst of a battle during World War II. All of the chaos that he was running from is immediately just an afterthought because he sees a young girl in a barn that he has to save. So they start to leave because obviously it's not safe, and he gets shot by a Nazi and lives. This girl questions the logic of it.
You're alive. Why didn't you die?
Hey, it's a kind of magic.
Then he, kills the Nazi.
Whatever you say, Jack. You're the master race.
And the girl grows up to be his assistant, entirely so that she can convince him that he's horny for Brenda. That's it. That's her entire purpose. And the last mention of World War II. Thoroughly convinced by his assistant, Connor goes over to Brenda's house for a hot date, right? But she plans to record their conversations so that she can get info about the sword that was found in the crime scene, right?
May I take a coat?
No, thanks.
What?
I'll hold on to it.
He then reveals that he owns her book about ancient sword making. Brenda is very angry and like surprised. She's all like,
You bastard. Where did you find this?
as if she didn't make it available to the public, and especially to his exact demographic of fucking people who care about old swords. Then we get some Queen and a flashback to Scotland where Connor has a wife and they've got this montage of her getting older, although they do like a summer, a winter, and then the next summer she's like 85. This would be convincing enough if she looked any different, because she looks the same but with some gray hair and half-assed makeup. Also, at the end of this, she's looking like spry and full of life and just like carrying this sheep up a mountain, right? And then immediately after gets in bed and just dies. We're gonna skip ahead a little bit. Goth Boy is killing another of the immortal people, but he attracts the attention of this dude who just has an SMG and this big crowd of people, right? Fucking stabs SMG boy, lifts him in the air, throws him against a wall, survives somehow, right? Then he steals an old couple's car and shaves his head as a disguise.
I am in disguise.
Goth Boy then plays with some candles and reveals that Connor is the only immortal person left for him to kill for like the prophecy to come true, right? And then he scares some nuns and gets kicked out of church and says this.
It's better to burn out than to fade away.
As this is happening, Brenda finds out that Connor is immortal because he uses the names of dead children as his identity. He's been doing it for years. She confronts him about it, and he goes, I'm immortal, and makes her stab him in the chest in his circle couch, right? And then they Goth Boy then is found eating a popsicle and kidnaps Brenda. This whole scene is shot like an MTV music video, which is fucking great, by the way. He also decides to obey 0 traffic laws. Here we are at the final battle where Connor goes to fight Goth Boy on top of a fucking sign on a rooftop. It's great. There's some great 80s screams and then a zip line. Then the roof is a pool, but like it's like waist deep for them, which doesn't make sense, but it's fine. It's the 80s. Of course, they fall through the roof and somehow Brenda is just down there. I don't know. All I'm gonna say about this fight and most of the others is that these guys are hundreds of years old at least. Like, I don't know how old this Goth Boy is, right? They're both considered warriors, and their very purpose in life is to kill each other. How are they this bad at fighting? It doesn't make sense, right? They fight like I used to when I pretended to be a Jedi in elementary school. Another thing, right? So evidence seems to suggest that they are stronger than the average person. But this like 7-foot tall goth dude, right? He's much stronger than Connor. Explain to me how Connor blocked this big ass sword swung by this big ass dude with a katana. Moving on, Goth Boy gets anime eyes and then gets killed. Leading to this. So, you know, Connor's telling this animated demon that he knows everything, right? Well, clearly on wires. Like, I know they didn't have CGI in the 80s to paint this out, right? But they've already painted all these fucking, like, all this swirly shit, these demons, all over. They're already doing it. The background is a solid color. They could just paint that out so easily. So remember how there's a prize? I didn't, but there's a prize for killing the last immortal guy. And Connor starts to explain this to Brenda, what the prize is.
But if I concentrate, I know what people are thinking all over the world. I'm just like you. I can love and have children, live and grow old. You never prepared me for that, you Spanish peacock.
So, in conclusion, I cannot imagine a world where this is made on purpose. I explained this really badly before, we'll just try it again. I can't imagine the actors having done more than one take for any of this. It almost seems like they forgot to have a script on set. Like maybe the director left it at home and was just going based off memory and had the actors just improvise the rest. Now that being said, I fucking love this movie. I've criticized it to hell for the past few minutes, but I think it's perfect. The director probably didn't expect this to be taken like too seriously, but he definitely didn't try to make it bad on purpose. Obviously a lot of work was put into this. It's shot in some really cool and creative ways. All of the painstaking animation is visually striking, and the budget was pretty hefty too. That's where all the effort seems to have gone, leaving us with some of the greatest dialogue of all time. You've got movies like The Velocipaster, or Zombievers, or the Sharknado series, right? That are trying to be the so bad it's good, you know? But you can't beat the real thing. This is like The Room, but honestly maybe funnier, because it's not just some oblivious dude with $6 million who thinks he's making a masterpiece. This had a whole ass budget and production company behind it. It had to go through a team of writers and producers and editors and the director, and they all thought this was a great idea. Somehow they all saw no problems with this. So this movie is part of a series, and I'm gonna go watch the rest of it. If you want me to make a video on some of that, let me know. If you didn't like this, also let me know, because I'm trying to figure out what to do with this YouTube channel. Feel free to subscribe. There will definitely be videos coming relatively soon. See ya.